Operational house, Quibu's hut. 0056 hours, 381 days after geonosis. Ordo placed the tight-wrapped packs of 500-grade thermoplastoid explosive on the table and stacked them in piles of 10. Darman picked one up and fondled it with the fascinated expression of a connoisseur of explosives. It was interesting, Attain thought, to note what made Darman feel relaxed and confident, because sitting on 50 kilos of ultra-high explosives didn't reassure her at all. "Duh, cut it out," Niner said. "We'd like the hotel to still be here when Val arrives. Reckon you can avoid blowing the place up for the next hour?" "This stuff is perfectly safe, unless you stick something metallic in it and trigger an electrolytic reaction," Darman said. He smiled at Etain before lobbing a hand-sized pack at Niner. "Udisi, Navad." Niner caught it and swore. Then he threw it back. Etain could hear the shower running in the fresher. She could also see Aten wandering around, eyes fixed in defocus on the grubby carpet, as if he was rehearsing a speech in his head, and he was trailing a disturbance in the force that felt like the aftermath of a battle. She had felt Aten's raw grief on Kilara, the pain at losing his original brothers at Geonosis, and she could taste the dark depths in him all too easily. Fee, even without the ability to use the force, seemed to be able to do the same. From time to time, he got up and gripped his brother by his upper arm, talking very quietly and earnestly to him. Much of the conversation was in Mandalorian, which she didn't understand well enough, but she certainly picked up one word that needed no translation: vow. Boss, Jussic, and Scorch had gone back down to the bar. Sev and Fixer were out on the landing platform, now looking like a normal hotel roof covered with assorted transport, from speeder bikes and air speeders to a couple of taxis, providing a discreet perimeter defense in case someone had tracked the strike team back to Quibu's. The whole place simmered with tension, and yes, it was there, very subtly, but it was there. Fear. "If Val's bringing the rest of the thermal, who's minding the prisoners?" Darman said. "I don't imagine they'll take much minding now," Ordo said. "But Anoka's around. So who's going to help him haul 50 kilos of dead weight?" Ordo looked faintly irritated. He still felt to Etain like a disjointed turmoil of emotions held in place by a ferociously intelligent logic. She had classified him as dangerous without really knowing why. "Vow," he said carefully. "He's still a fit man. A soldier since childhood, just like you and Calboir. He can carry 50 kilos on his own almost as well as you can." Ordo adjusted the pile of sealed packs so they lined up perfectly, as if that mattered very much to him. "And if Inoka doesn't need to guard prisoners, she'll help him carry the ordnance. Either way, stop worrying." "Yeah, that's my job," Niner said. Etain had a very good idea what "doesn't need to guard prisoners" meant. If they had ceased to be useful, then they were a liability here, just as they were on Kilara, and they would be shot. Darman killed separatists when he couldn't take them prisoner. She'd watched him do it. Clean, quick, passionless. And was this the dark side, finally pulling her over the edge? Even if she would hesitate to do it herself, she was no longer appalled that he or his comrades did. He looked up from the packets and gave her a broad smile. There was never a hint of darkness in him. "It's perfectly safe," he said. She realized she was frowning at him and that he had taken it to be a comment on the pile of instant destruction on the table. "Don't you trust me?" She smiled back instinctively. "Of course I trust you. Yes, I do. You're my friend, my lover." Skirata emerged from the fresher, toweling his hair and wearing a change of clothes with his verpine in its light gray holster. He leaned over Niner to look at the holozine he was reading. "Don't you ever watch the Holo News?" he asked, pointing at the darkened screen on the wall. "Too much to take in." Niner resumed reading. "Other people's complicated lives." Aten had settled in the corner with his DC-17 on his lap. They all kept the rifle close to them when they weren't in public. It was too obviously a commando weapon in the street and had to be replaced by a discreet blaster. But back here, they lavished affection on the DC again. It was the weapon they had been raised with and now lived by. Fee had his slung over his shoulder, and he was looking out the window onto the catwalk opposite, the one that linked another level of seedy bars with the concourse below. He was invisible to the Coruscant beyond the transperisteel, but clearly it was painfully visible to him. Etain could feel his longing. Fee had changed since Kulara. Etain had first sensed him in the Force as good-natured and calm. A year later, his facade was as unfailingly cheerful, but the undertow was darker, more desperate. He had seen too much of war, and he had glimpsed something even more painful and guaranteed to trouble him. Ordinary people on Coruscant, leading normal lives of the kind he would never have. She didn't need the Force to help her taste that. She could see the constant question on his face when he glanced at couples and families of all species. Why not me? Why is this life not for me? It was what Darman had asked. Family and clan, family and fatherhood, seemed of overwhelming importance to Mandalorian men. They certainly drove Skirata. Then Etain knew exactly what the Force had in mind for her, and it was not the path of a Jedi any longer. It was to ensure that at least one cloned man was given back the future that had been taken away from him at birth, or whatever cold, distant process served for birth in those Kaminoan laboratories. Etain would make him a father one day. She would give Darman a son. But neither of them had the luxury of a normal life in this war. Her dream would be a secret, even from him for the time being. Then Etain put the thought from her mind and closed her eyes to meditate, unself-conscious because she was among true friends. She drifted in formless calm, hearing only the slowed pace of her own heartbeat, until the door buzzed. She snapped alert again. So did Omega and Skirata. Etain saw the squad individually as clearly as she did any other beings, and not just because the Force tinted them with their unique shades of character. She had ceased to see their identical faces or their armor, and experienced instead only their distinct personalities and habits. And yet, when they moved, when they switched to their soldier state of being, they were like a single perfect predator. The buzz made them all look up together, not like ordinary men responding by staggered milliseconds one after the other, but in one movement, absolutely synchronized, and their expressions and the angle of their heads and their frozen alertness were one. Then, with another perfect single movement, they split like a fist, opening into fingers and snapping to positions around the room, rifles trained on the door. Not a word. Not one hand signal from Niner. They hadn't even had time to put on their helmets and activate the shared comlink. Whatever told them to move there, do this, watch that, was so thoroughly ingrained in them from drilling that they almost seemed to be operating on instinct. Their dark, high-cheekboned exotic faces were expressionless. Except for the rapid blinking, they were completely and utterly still. Etain suddenly saw them as that single exquisite predator again, and it scared her. Their DC-17 rifles all blipped once in unison as each weapon charged up to fire. "Vows not due yet, and deltas on perimeter." Skirata had his Verpine Shattergun trained this time, not his small blaster, an indication of how much higher he felt the stakes were. "Etain, you feel anything?" Nothing. She was certain she would have perceived a threat by now. She was suddenly aware that she had drawn her lightsaber. She hadn't even felt herself move. Nothing at all. "Okay. On 3. 1, 2... And the door opened. Etain flinched involuntarily, grasping her lightsaber two-handed. A scent hit her, a foul, damp musk. "Firfik," Skirata said. "You Daikut! We could have blown your head off." Niner, Ordo, Darman, and Fee made annoyed clicks and sighs and lowered their DCs. Aten didn't. Val walked in with 2 straining carryalls and a 6-legged loose-skinned shambles of pale gold short fur ambling behind him. So that was the Strill. And the absence of malice and tension had been ice-cold calm, utterly detached Wayland Val. "Attica, lower your DC," Skirata said softly. "If you say so, Sarge." And although Aten obeyed, his steady stare at Val was an eloquent, loaded weapon.
"Come on in," said Fee. "Ain't nobody here but us clones."
"You could have called ahead," Skirata said. Val lowered the carryalls to the floor, and Ordo pounced on them. "Just challenging your security, like I ought to. Well, either Delta and Josic just got instantly stupid, or they let pass someone they knew, so don't get cocky. Anything you want to tell us?" "I've shut down the safe house, and Anoka has cleaned up." Etain listened intently to the language, spoken in the code of euphemism out of long habit. Cleaning up certainly meant removing bloodstains, because she'd seen them, but she had the feeling it was more than that. "No further business with our 2 friends," Skirata said. "That's the trouble with Coruscant," Val said. "High balconies are safety risks. At least that confirms our 2 guests weren't Jedi, eh?" Val found a seat, and the Strill scrambled onto his lap. It took Etain a moment to work out what he meant, and the realization shocked her. "The other fortunate thing is that I was able to talk to Vina Gis's supervisor at GAR Logistics as her landlord, and complain that she had skipped owing me rent. The supervisor was sympathetic and said she was an unreliable employee." "So?" said Skirata. Omega had disappeared back to the rooms that led off the main one, except Aten. Aten waited, a block of black hatred, and Ordo stacked the explosives. "So, at least we don't have to worry about her being missed too badly." Val glanced at Aten, almost as if he was seeking a greeting, but got no reaction. "And she confirmed that there was one other person in logistics that she had to leave information for in an agreed place. A dead letter drop inside the GAR complex, whenever she could manage it. In a locker in the female freshers." "What? Are you kidding me?" "I know. We spend millions on the latest ships, but we're stuffed by a simple security leak that wouldn't baffle a Quintona Grossa." Etain felt Skirata generate a little dark vortex of rage, his face drained of color. "Why are they so shabla clueless?" "Because they're a bureaucracy, and they're not the ones in the front line. Anyway, none of the traffic information is impossible to dig out by other routes. It's just quick and easy, all wrapped up in one chip. Worth having because it saves them a lot of time, which means they don't have many personnel. Small and opportunistic network, I reckon." Skirata was rubbing his face slowly with both hands, exasperated and weary. "So, she didn't know who collected the data, other than that they could use the female freshers without attracting attention, or what their schedule was. If she had known, I can guarantee she would have told me." "I'll bet." "So, we need someone in there to flush that person out." "That's me," Ordo said, and went on making the thermoplastoid into neat piles. Etain had counted 200 small rectangular packets so far. "All I have to do is withdraw the trooper who's seconded to the transport division and step in." "And what happens to him?" Val said. "He stays here until I'm finished," Ordo said. "You can make a commando out of him in the meantime, Calbuya." "Well, this is going to be very cozy." Val rubbed the Strill's back, and it shuddered with visible delight. "Because you have to find a room for me, too." "Then the Strill sleeps on the landing platform," Skirata said. "Then I do, too," said Val. Fee emerged from the room he shared with Aten and stared at the animal.
We could always leave it downstairs in the bar as an air freshener.
One day, Aussie 8015, Val said, smiling with unusual sincerity. You might be very glad of Miad's natural talents. Etain suspected they were not dissimilar to its masters.